You must be careful about the words you use, or the words you allow to be used in your house. Words are things. You must be careful. Careful about calling people out of their names, using racial pejoratives and sexual pejoratives and all that ignorance. Don't do that.
It's time to talk about it.
Pull up a chair and take a seat.
We're serving up recipes for life.
With Hampton University's Dr. Richard Mason and Dr. Tamara Williams.
Welcome to the Sunday Brunch.
This is Dr. Tamara Williams.
And this is Dr. Richard Mason. And welcome back to the table for another edition of Sunday Brunch with the Good Doctors.
The good doctors. Hey, bro.
Hey, how's it going?
I would like to tell you all is well. I can tell you that all will be well. We've got a couple losses in the family this week. So, you know, life is life for some people, but I can say all will be well because this is a part of our process. So I'm trusting the process and moving through it.
Look, that's what we do, you know, and we always know that sometimes it's okay not to be okay.
And we have to be the ones to tell people and remind them. And I have no problems reminding them that we're people too. And things happen in our lives too. So, yeah.
Exactly. We just have to find that space that we just know that, hey, we're going to have our moments, we're going to have our time, but of course, we're just going to keep on rolling and keep on moving. And
I'm celebrating the fact that I'm still here.
What Tina Turner said, we got to be like Proud Mary.
Yes.
Because this train going to keep on rolling.
It's going to keep on rolling. It's going to roll with or without us, that's for sure. And so I'm, just appreciating the moments of the roll and taking it in stride. And it's just a constant reminder that we just have to appreciate those around us while we have them because we have time limits.
Exactly. You just never know the day nor the hour, and they could
thief in the night. Thief in the night.
Yeah. And what's really interesting, I'm finding and seeing, more and more younger people, that are leaving. My cousin and I were talking a few weeks ago that, he said, have you noticed that people are dying that's closer to our age now?
That's what I'm trying to tell you. That's what I'm trying to tell you, how the introspection started to come because these are people who, when you're younger, you think it happens to other people. You don't really naturally associate it happening to you. As you get older and the more and more people in your age range to say goodnight, that final goodnight, it becomes more and more of a reality. We have fewer summers and we're getting closer to that process. So
we can't always think it's the older people.
Down. Listen, I'm finding that some of the older people are outliving some of the younger people.
Exactly. What I say, it's not always the leaning tree that falls.
Now that's a whole word. It could be the one leaning on it. It could be the one under it. Who knows?
Exactly.
Sometimes it looks like it's standing tall and straight, and then it just falls. And so
that's right.
I guess the word of the day is be you always ready.
That's right. In every situation, be ye ever so ready.
Be ready. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So
exactly.
Definitely.
I got my plate ready because I know they're about to put that bacon out there on that buffet.
Listen,
I'm gonna make my way right on over there.
I smell it. You already know what I need you to bring me back. Only one of us needs to stand in that line, and then I'll go ahead and introduce our guest for the day.
All right, got you covered with that biscuit and honey butter, so I will be back.
Thank you. Thank you. 2 biscuits today. I'm feeding my feelings.
All right.
But on another note, sometimes we do end up laughing to keep from crying, and we do bring humor to many situations. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that is really near and dear to our heart because we care about the babies. We care about the circumstances that people find themselves in. And we don't get to pick our families. We know we do get to pick our friends, but a lot of us are born into circumstances or find ourselves in circumstances that we don't have those type of choices. But we still need humanity and we still need to live and to be and be respected and be safe. And so we're going to have that conversation about what we need from our community today. We have some little people who need some homes.
Mm-hmm.
And we have some little people who had some rough circumstances. And so I'm looking forward to having this conversation because when we bring light to certain circumstances, we can do something about it. When we know better,
Mm-hmm.
we can be better. And
Exactly.
we know that we have not because we ask not. So we're gonna have a conversation of that ask today. That ask
Mm-hmm.
of what some people need to do if they can potentially do that. Because the other part we're gonna have the conversation about is just because you can doesn't mean that you should.
And listen.
We can sit right there on that, but just because you can does not mean that you should. But if you can, and if you're able, and if it is appropriate, we want to have that conversation about some placements, some foster placements, foster
Mm-hmm.
care, foster
Mm-hmm.
homes.
Yes. Yes.
And so we have a social worker extraordinaire, retired semi right now. I don't think that she's fully retired because she's still working in the field, still trying to save these babies.
The
But we're
social
going to have
workers never retire.
hello, somebody.
They may downshift, but they never retire.
Whew, whew. Yeah, the labor is plentiful, but the workers are few. The workers are few because of the burnout. But we want to talk about that need, and we want to welcome to the table for this conversation the great Robin Scott.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yes.
Welcome
Welcome
to
to the
Sunday
table.
Brunch. We
Hello.
have to say the great Robin Scott. We have to give honor to the people who put in that good work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's hard work. It's hard work. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard work, and it's much needed work. And you right there on the field. So the great. It's not for
Mm-hmm.
everybody. The great Robin Scott.
I'm
Welcome
Exactly.
to the
glad,
table.
glad to be here with you guys. I don't know about being great, but I care. That's the biggest
Absolutely,
thing. That's the
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And she has been that caring person since day one that I met her, working with families and children, and then went over to working with adults and all as well. But I will start by asking this, what was your drive in terms of how did you come to the place that you said, hey, listen, I want to get into social work?
Wow. Well, you know what? I knew from a very young person, little girl, in fact,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember a teacher in elementary school telling my mother that she felt I was destined to work in one of the helping fields. She didn't know which one, but
Mm-hmm.
she
Mm-hmm.
nailed it. And so both of my parents worked for the Department of Corrections Youth Services.
Okay.
And
Really?
yeah, mom worked with the girls and dad worked with the boys. And
Okay.
so I have memories of their stories at the dinner table. And I also remember them bringing the kids home because back then, Department of Corrections for kids was like shoplifting or
Mm-hmm.
or not going to
I
school.
was wondering where you were going with this part. I was
Yeah,
like
it was.
bringing them home.
They
What's
weren't right. It was a different time. It was a different
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
70s. And so I was intrigued. I was intrigued to know that there were kids that lived somewhere other than with their parents or with their families. I was intrigued with how things got that way for them and how they navigated through it. And
Mm-hmm.
then after I became a teenager, my parents befriended a couple who were both in social work.
Okay.
And so they had a great impact on my decision. And I had lots of people that told me, "Oh, why don't you go into that field, you're not going to make any money. And well, they were so right about that. But but at 17, you just know you want to help people.
Right.
So I did. I graduated from high school.
In other ways.
Yeah, and I went off to Norfolk State in 1979.
Okay.
And
That's a
I
beautiful year.
majored in social work, and at the time, I talked a lot about going into gerontology, but God tends to place you where you need to be, and so when I graduated, I was putting in applications everywhere because I just know I had to pay that student loan off for sure, and so I landed a position. Well, I worked a lot of different places. Um, the villa in Richmond was like a group home type setting for kids. I worked there for a small period of time. I worked at Cumberland Hospital in New Kent County for a period of time. But I was still wanting that social work title. I was doing I think the title back then was like child care worker or something like that. And so I've put in several places. I finally got in Caroline County Department of Social Services.
Okay.
And that's where I started. There we did generic type services, but I did do foster care there as well as CPS. Okay. And that's where I got my foot in the door. That's where I started. And then I eventually went on to Newport News Human Services, and I was there for 31 years.
Oh, wow.
31 years working I did foster care and child in need of services, which is another program area that prevents kids from going into foster care. So, the big thing then was prevention. And then just before I retired, I worked with the adults. And so I did get that gerontology thing going for a little bit. And then from there, I went to work for a private company, excuse me, doing foster parent training and recruitment. And
I want to go back a little bit about, you said you were working with adults.
Yes.
What does that look like? Because we're talking about foster care, so what does that look like, social work working with adults?
It's not as easy as it sounds. A lot of people think that once if they switch over from child welfare, which is very demanding, that when they go with the adults, it might be a little easier work because they're adults and I don't have to care for them like I would a child. However, a lot of them are in dementia.
Okay.
They're unable to make decisions for themselves, and you have to figure it out. You have families who have don't have a lot of resources and they don't really want to give up on their loved ones, but they don't have the resources to give them or help them in a way that will help them to end life, peacefully.
Right.
And so it's very complicated. They oftentimes are not quite, they're able to talk to you. They're in their right minds at times. And so you can't force them to move out of their home that might be falling down around them. And you can't take it to court because they're in their right minds. I mean, what judge is going to make that decision for an adult? I mean, if they want to lie in a dirty house and let the house fall on their heads, it's nothing that anyone can do, basically. So it's a lot more. It's a little bit more complicated, I think. And I may be saying that because I was really cut out for the kids.
You might have had more compassion, for the kids than for the adults. And I appreciate your honesty in that. We already said just because people can does not mean that they should. That a lot of times people may find themselves in a role, but that might not be their best role.
Exactly.
Their life's
where they fit. Exactly. Yeah. So, and believe it or not, I absolutely loved the teenagers.
Really?
Oh, I did. So many people say, "How could you work with that population? They talk back. You know." And my thing with the teenagers was that they were always real,
Mm-hmm.
and
And raw.
sometimes, yeah, but sometimes it would come out rough.
Yeah.
But at least you knew where they were coming
You know where they
from.
stand.
You
Yeah.
knew what they
Right.
were thinking. Sometimes with the little ones, you have to pry information because they don't know
Mhm.
how to express it. They don't,
Right.
they can't
Mm-hmm.
get it out for you to understand. So I loved working with the teenagers. When I did foster care, I had teenagers, and of course, when I got to child in need of services, I had teenagers, big time.
What's the
Mm-hmm.
difference between foster care and child in need of services?
Okay, so foster care is when a child has been determined to be abused, neglected, or exploited to an
Mm-hmm.
extent that they have to be removed from their biological parent or whatever adult is caring for them,
The
um,
primary caregiver. Gotcha.
their primary caregiver. Um, child in need of services, child in need of supervision and services is a whole different program in that it touches on those families that are struggling with a child in some form, and but they're still there, and they need someone to help them hold it together until they can get better.
It's a
And
Mm-hmm.
supportive service.
supportive service, it was, and during my time it was to prevent children from coming into foster care.
Mm-hmm.
But we also dealt with things such as truancy, status type offenses, shoplifting, whatever they were out there doing. And we're trying to prevent them from going deeper into the criminal justice system. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of times the kids in Chins did end up in foster care, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
If we couldn't do the repair work,
Mm-hmm.
they would end up coming into foster care because it was probably more the parent issue than a child issue,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was not repairable at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So a decision would have to be made for a child coming to foster care.
Mm, okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned chins, and so that's what child in need of services is. So sometimes people
Mm-hmm.
will hear, well, as some folks say, go over town and take out a chins petition.
Kids petition, right? That's what
Exactly.
that is. Uh-huh. Yes, that's what that
Yeah.
is. And I understand that program may have changed some.
Mm-hmm.
The particular department that I worked for was one of the only departments that even had a CHINS program. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I understand that some of the policies and what
Mm-hmm.
have you may have changed with that program now. But that's what it was when I was out there
Mm-hmm.
doing it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so then from there I ended up in recruitment of foster parents because
Mm-hmm.
my thing the whole time that I did social work was uh, the child is being a child. We got an adult problem,
Mm-hmm.
and
Can
and
you
I
say that one more time? One more
a,
time.
a child. Children were being children, but we had adult
Mhm.
problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so, I'd done work in actually working with the foster child, working with the biological family, and working with the foster parents, but never on the end of actually training a foster parent on how to parent a foster child. Um, and so when I saw that position, I got a little excited, and I was supposed to be retired, but I applied for it. And
Isn't that something? Your work
yeah,
called you out of retirement.
yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was only in retirement for about a month, I think, when I went in.
Didn't even count that. Unless you get a separate check, then it counts. It counts.
That's right. And so I did that for about 3 years, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But it comes a time when you have to end things. I did most of it. When I took the position, it was during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So it was a challenge to train people through a computer because we couldn't meet up.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure that they were getting things done and understood the concepts, and then we were also challenged with trying to recruit foster parent during a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So
Trying to get someone to open up their home when everybody has told them to close them
exactly,
down.
Right.
exactly, yeah. But the bottom line was that abuse, neglect, and exploitation was still happening,
Mm.
and children still needed homes. So we had to continue.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very rewarding seeing the smiles on foster parents' faces once they finished the training program, because
Mm-hmm.
they were usually ready. They were so ready at that point. And placing, or I did not do the placements, but just hearing about, their first placement, that they got a child in their home and what it was like. And, and just trying to stay there for them, be available to hear what it was like for them, and being able to lend a helping hand, giving good advice,
Mm-hmm.
suggestions, ideas on how to deal with maybe a problem that a certain child may have had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then they were also required to work with the biological family.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to lend a hand with how do I work with this mother whose child is in my home, get through her resentment and her resentment of me because I'm parenting her child. And so that kind of says to me, or to the biological parent, am I better than she is? So it's a lot of work that goes into bridging it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's oh so rewarding. I've heard so many stories. I talked to two of my former foster parents just this week, and uh, they loved it. But they will tell you that they loved it when they had good workers working with them,
Mm-hmm.
and supporting them and guiding them, because there are going to be times when you have an acting out child in your home that you're going to just like be exasperated and thinking, what am I going to do with this kid?
Mm-hmm.
He's tearing up stuff, or um, he's peeing on the floor, or whatever it is that they might be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And to think that you probably thought yourself growing up, I never did those things, and how am I going to deal with this kid,
Mm-hmm.
and what my mother would have done if it was something like this. But if you have that good support system,
Mm-hmm.
and when I talk about support systems, I mean the workers that provide the service of foster parent services and so forth, but also that worker who can go the extra step of even reaching out to the school system, um, taught knowing the teachers, understanding what the child is doing in school. The bus driver even should know, um, whoever's working with that child, because what that child is seeing is a group of adults who have a net around them, a net of protection. It's a security blanket.
Mm-hmm.
So there are things that sometimes we don't think of doing. I had a foster parent who was having problems with a little boy who was acting out in school, but the main problem was on the school bus. And so I suggested to her that she go to the bus. I mean, of course, we may stand out at the bus stop and watch the kid get on the bus, but I want her to do a little bit more. Introduce herself to the bus driver,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a talk with the kid, with the bus driver, and we have you. I understand that there's some kids on the bus that might be bullying you, but we're the adults. We're
Mm-hmm.
gonna make sure that you're safe, and I'm gonna talk to your bus driver daily to find out what went on and how things went, and that kind of thing. And so behavior started to get a little bit better
Mm-hmm.
after that. So they're just little things that you can do.
And it sounds like fostering you can have a lot of support with that, which is a good thing, because I know oftentimes people think that being a foster parent means that someone's just going to drop a kid off and walk away from them.
Exactly. Right. And that's not at all what good services are.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not what a good social worker would do. Um, and the key to it all is communication, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you may have a foster parent that just looks like they know what they're doing, and they're very confident, and and then you find out that they were really struggling. So
Mm-hmm.
the key is to pay attention
Mm-hmm.
and to communicate how you're feeling and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's some good companies out here
Mm-hmm.
that provide that kind of support to foster parents.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me how people get involved, I guess, in the different companies then. Is it the
Okay.
city then assesses the situation and then they
So
kind of contract to companies to try to
yeah,
help them assist in that?
yeah. Normally, what happens is it starts off actually with Child Protective Services, usually,
Mm-hmm.
where they have discovered a child has been abused in some way or neglected. Um, and they could not provide services in a way that could maintain the child in the home at that time. And so child would then go before the court, and the judge would make a decision that whether or not the child needed to come into foster care. And once the child comes into foster care, that's when a local Department of Human Services would be responsible for placing a child in a foster home.
Mm-hmm.
And what goes into that is finding out as much as possible about the child,
Mm-hmm.
what they're like, what the family's like. Because remember, you're not just servicing the child; you're servicing the family unit. And so you wouldn't want to put a child in a home where the mother may have a problem with that particular type of person that you're placed the child with. Um, but at any rate, so once the child goes into foster care, a lot of times the social worker has to call around to various other agencies, private companies that provide therapeutic foster care services to children.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, honestly, the local departments of human services just don't have enough foster parents.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of times the child has special needs that require a more specialized care, and that goes back to what I was talking about when I talked about training foster parents. Um, Child may be having some emotional issues that a foster parent that has not been trained properly would not be able to manage. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so we call various agencies that do provide that service and match up the usually the company provides the local department with a home study so they can see what the parent is like on paper.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then
That
from
foster
there,
parent? That foster parent?
the
Okay,
foster
gotcha.
parent, I'm sorry, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's conversation between the worker from the local Department of Human Services and the workers from the companies that provide the foster homes. And a decision is made which home would be best for the child. And then a placement is made.
Okay.
So that's kind of how that
While
works.
you're waiting for these placements to happen, where are the children?
Well, you're actually you're gonna make a placement when the child comes into care that day. You have to, because there's nowhere else for them to go. So
that was my question. I was like, what are you
right.
doing with these
So you
babies
have
while you're
to
trying
come
to
you have to come up with something that day. And I mean that's why it can be a stressful career. You work fast, you work hard, and it's serious business. And so a lot of times you do find a home right then, but a lot of times you don't. So you may have to do a temporary placement, like with someone for about a couple of days or a week until you actually
find
come
a
up with
better
that
fit?
home that fits them. Yeah.
Right. And they call that what? Respite care. Is it?
Yes.
Okay. And so someone could really do fostering on a respite basis whereby they are not long-term foster parents, but maybe, a
Exactly.
respite kind of situation where they accept someone into their home, a couple of
For
days or to a
emergency,
week,
gotcha.
Yes, we used to have homes, in fact, that would take children. Like if a kid came into care at 2 o'clock in the morning, we knew that was the go-to parent that we would ring and say, "Hey, we have a 8-year-old, and this has happened to her, and we just need you for a little bit until we can figure out the next step for this child." And there are actually foster parents that do that. And then
It's a
you may
special
have.
place in heaven for those people. Because
Yes,
you're talking about Christ. This is like Underground Railroad type
yes,
stuff. Like, this is crisis, and right here in the moment, we need you to
yes,
open your door and let us in right now.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so that would be considered a respite home. And they're also utilized in a way that, let's say you have foster parents, because foster parents are people too.
Yes.
And sometimes, just like a biological parent, they may need a break. And
Yes.
so sometimes we will place a child in a respite home while the foster parent recharges. Now, we don't want to do that for an extenuating period of time.
That was my next question.
But
How long is the recharge?
but, but we have done that, yeah.
You may need to give them, you mean like a week, a couple days to kind of
Exactly. Exactly.
restructure
Let's
some
say
things.
you may have a couple who need some alone time together, and maybe it's their anniversary, or
Okay.
something like that. But what we don't do is utilize respite homes for, let's say, a family says, you know what, we need a vacation, and they pack up everything and they take themselves and their biological children on vacation. That's a no. Foster child is a part of that family. We will not put a foster child in respite while you go on vacation with the rest of your family.
Yeah, that's a terrible feeling right
That's a
there.
terrible feeling. Yes.
And it puts that kid in even a more bad space, I'm sure. Once again, feeling neglected and having been taken from their family, and then you're with another family who's now, I don't get to do the fun stuff with you guys,
Exactly.
So I'm really not
I'm not a part of your family.
That's the whole Cinderella spirit right there. Yeah. That's not a good look. You can work here, you can help us maintain this house, but you can't reap any of the benefits of being a part of the family.
So I just, I wanted to put emphasis on that, because we have had that experience of maybe not the best foster parent calling and saying, I just need some time with my kids. And we're going to know that foster child is a part of your family unit.
Right. Okay. So families, even because I guess sometimes people may think they can be foster parents if they don't have children, but foster parents can have children of their own and foster another child.
Of course. Yes. And you would be surprised at some of the biological children of foster parents who have a great knack for being foster siblings. It's almost like it's in them. They know how to jump in there with the kid from day one. And,
Mm-hmm.
and so I believe that training goes beyond the foster parent. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't see that. That's a Robin Scott theory. I've never seen. I can't say that I've actually seen it done, but
Yeah,
I feel that the siblings should be trained as well to know what to expect.
I do
Because
too.
yeah, I mean, you know, a child may feel like, how dare this child come in my mom and daddy's house and curse? I couldn't
Yeah.
curse, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of like to prepare them for that and explain where it comes from,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that they understand what it is, how it got there, and how you need to meet it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's just one of my
Mm-hmm.
I think that's powerful, Robin. When my
Mhm,
husband and I trained to be therapeutic foster parents,
mhm,
one of the things that they talk to us about is, that foster child is not there to take the place of you not having a child or you having,
right,
Mm-hmm.
or having a
right,
child, and that you have to really go over those unspoken rules that are
right,
in your family
Mm-hmm.
so that you can help
right.
them adjust to the setting because they don't know all of these rules. And so I can
Exactly.
imagine just how powerful that is to include the siblings. I think that should be a part of standard
Oh
process,
yeah,
really, because,
definitely. Yeah.
they're part of that family home too.
Mhm.
And they
Mhm.
have to be able to respond with compassion and
That's right.
care to a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these
Mhm.
incidences.
Mhm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
involves them. It involves them.
It does. And there are things that just need to be covered when you're blending people because
Mm-hmm.
you may have a foster family that has a pet and you may have a child that you're trying to place that maybe has been involved in abuse of animals. So you really have to consider where you're placing a child and how they fit, and you can't forget the things that you may think are the small things.
That's a
Um,
Mm-hmm.
major thing, Robin. Abuse of
oh
animals
Right.
yeah,
is no
yeah,
small
but
thing.
you'll be surprised that when people are working hard to get a placement, and they may not even think. I mean, they may
Mm,
know that there's a pet there, but they
yeah.
may not even think about how that child is going to react to the pet,
Mm-hmm.
or they may forget that the family has a pet. I mean, you work with
Yeah.
people, so many people during the day. So those are things that you really need to consider when you're making a placement
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for a
So,
child.
how are foster families supported financially? Because
Okay.
taking another kid into your home certainly
Mhm.
adds to
Mhm.
the financial strain that can be placed
Sure,
on it. Mm-hmm.
sure. Each agency has a stipend um,
Mm-hmm.
for foster parents. Now, the stipends are different according to localities. Stipends are different according to companies. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that's one of the questions that foster parents need to ask, and it's made clear that the stipend is for the child. Now, foster parent may get what is it, room and board, funding for the child to be there. But then there's a portion of the money that goes towards just general care for the child. Um,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Food,
Clothing, food.
the
Yes.
general, yeah, yeah. So that's always going to be there. Um, but I don't. Now we do ask most of the time that foster parents are self sufficient. They have to be self sufficient because if we place a child in your care and you're unable to maintain the electricity, um,
Mm-hmm.
your food bill, or whatever else that you should be taking care of yourself with, and you call us and you say the lights are out. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what that child probably came out of an environment like that where
Mm-hmm.
things were unstable. So
Yes.
we don't want that. So we do consider and we do look at your ability
Mm-hmm.
um, to care for yourself prior to placing a child in your home. So it's not that we're being nosy, but we do have to know your income status.
That's
And
Mm-hmm.
we
important. That's
do have to
important.
know your
Mm-hmm.
So,
income
yeah.
status, and we have to know about how much is coming into your home, income wise, and how much is going out. We have to look at your bills and make sure that you're floating along okay. Now we don't expect you don't have to be rich. We don't expect that. Just stable. Just be
Mm-hmm.
stable.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know we're placing kids in homes. We want it to be an average American home. We don't want it to be. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we do know that it could be a hardship on a child who has already been removed from a parent that they loved. Because no matter what a parent does to a child, the child's still
They
gonna
still
love that
love them.
parent. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And put them in an environment that's not much better.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
You
that's
could
Mm-hmm.
have
that's
left me at home is how they will then
right.
look at that situation. You have
Mm-hmm.
not helped me at all. You made this more of a
Exactly.
challenge. And moreover, I think we need to know the income of people, because you don't want people turning children into a business. You don't want
Exactly.
them trying to collect as
Hmm.
many kids as they can
Exactly.
to supplement their lifestyles. Because then
Hmm.
the children feel as if you don't really care about them. You're only
Exactly.
looking at me for a paycheck.
And
Mm-hmm.
believe you me, the workers are able to feel it's a vibe. You can even if you think you're covering it up.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that happen during the course of the placement that a worker can tell that that's what you're doing, that you are making an income, that you're not really there to care for a child, but to make extra money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the thing about it is that, and I say this cautiously, but saying it also directly to people who are considering fostering. Um, the agency that does that placement has every right in the world to remove that child from your care if they don't feel like they're properly being cared for. If you're taking the money, doing something
Mm-hmm.
else with it, in fact, it's often that you have to show where the money's going.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
that's that's the general rule regarding
Mm-hmm.
finances and
Mm-hmm.
foster parents. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So
And that's very important. That is certainly very important. Like I said, you certainly don't want it to turn into a business. Although, like I said, it can be a lucrative income source, but you just don't want
right,
it to be business. You still want people with caring hearts,
exactly,
that are there to help,
right,
nurture these young folks and provide an example of
right,
what a good home is.
exactly, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not just
So
housing kids for money. We don't
right.
want that.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff. I mean, I've had kids to tell me that they're not getting the food intake that they should be getting,
Mm-hmm.
or that they're wearing the same outfit to school 3 times a week, one outfit, or things like that. That's when
Alarming.
radar would go up. Yeah, and it's like, okay, what's
Mm-hmm.
happening here? And then that and the worker has every right to come in and I hate to use the word investigate, but look into what's going
Mm-hmm.
on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
We need people who are not afraid to go in there and do that specifically.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the
So,
need is really big for foster
mm-hmm.
parents. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we need them terribly. I think I last looked at the statistics that is about 440,000 kids in foster care in the U.S. alone, and this may
Mm-hmm.
be an old figure, and that in the state of Virginia is about 5,000 or more, a little bit more than 5,000 kids in care. That's a lot of kids.
Mm-hmm.
And the average age of a child in foster care is about age 8, even though we have them all ages.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the need is there. I'm not going to deny that
Right.
the need is there, but we still want quality.
Right.
We
Mm-hmm.
want quality
And it can be from infants all the way up to teenagers.
to teenagers.
So,
And actually, sometimes there are older kids in care after the age of 18 If they are in an education program, or some type of program that's preparing them to be independent in life. Sometimes they can go past the 18 mark. It's not often, but it can happen.
Okay. Now, what about keeping siblings together? Are you required sometimes to, if you accept one kid, do you have to take the other kid? How does that work?
We really, really push for that because the children have already been removed from their families, from their parents. So we try to at least keep the kids together. And the children really suffer because they don't know what happened to their sibling, where they are, if they're okay. Especially the older children struggle not knowing where the baby kids are. So yes, we do really try to place the children together. Unfortunately, there have been instances where maybe we found foster homes and we could not find one that would take, especially if it's a very large sibling group. So we have done things such as get foster parents who partnered with each other and made sure that the children saw each other frequently, and let them talk on the phone every evening after school or something like that. But yes, we really do push for the children to all be together. That's important. Yeah, it's very important. Yeah.
Now,
What are the age ranges of the children that you place? Infants all the way up?
Infants all the way up. Now, like I said, at 8 is the average age of children in foster care, but they come from newborn, from the hospital. I had placed the children straight from birth. In fact, I remember one child. I actually had to go to the hospital when the child was born and pick the child up and bring them to a foster home. That I believe that situation went straight into adoption, and I named the child. I had to name. There's so many
Really?
things social workers have to do. Oh, I've named children. I've had to bury
Ooh,
children. Fortunately, yeah. So
whoa.
yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to be in
I
a
have
social.
never really heard anyone really have that conversation, of the
Yeah,
different aspects. You talk about going
yeah.
into homes, but you talk about going all the way in from birth and actually naming a child
Naming a
and
child. Yeah.
then burying a child.
I had a child, unfortunately, to die in foster care, and um, and I had to prepare the child for burial,
Ooh.
funeral arrangements. Very tough situation. That's when you start questioning: Did I go into the right field? And
Ooh.
that child was the youngest of a sibling group of four. And I remember it well because I had to break the news to the children and everything because the
Ooh.
parents were nowhere to be found. So yeah. So it happens. I don't know of any other social worker that I've met that had to do that, but I did. That was my experience. And so yes, there's so many things. And foster parents actually have to live through some of those things too. They have to go through
Yes.
those experiences. In fact, that little girl died in a foster home, and that foster mother was torn to pieces. I remember them calling me that morning. I was up getting ready for work and got a call from CPS worker, and she told me, "Don't come into the office. I need you to go to Miss So and So's house because little Susie has passed." And when I got there, the coroner was there. And I remember the hearse was there. So I had to put me aside for a moment to help deal with that foster parent who was really going through changes.
I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear that she was going through changes. I'm glad that you're not telling me she was the one responsible for this stuff because that's what I was concerned about.
It was
Ugh.
questioned. It was questioned, but at that moment, when I arrived, the first thing was to get everybody settled and okay, so we could talk. But she was not found responsible, but it was questionable at a moment there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, give
Yeah.
us the joys of fostering, because
The
we're
joys of
wrapping.
fostering. The joys of fostering is when you have been a foster parent for a period of time to the extent that children have grown up in your home and they come back after they're grown because they still see you as being a mama or a
Yeah.
dad
Mm-hmm.
to them. Um, the joy of fostering is when you were told when a child was placed in your home that they were slow, they weren't able to make it in school, or they were having a hard time, and
Mm-hmm.
you work with that kid, and then they do something special to get
Mm-hmm.
ahead in school, and you feel like you have helped them get there, you
Yes.
know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
joy of fostering is when you get a teenager in your home, and maybe when she came to you, she had some self-esteem issues, and she was like maybe having sexual relations with all sort of boys everywhere, anytime, any day, and you're able to bring her under your wing and help build that self-esteem until she is so proud of herself that she won't go there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's so many happy moments, and there are a lot of tender moments
Mm-hmm.
when you feel like, oh my God, this is really my child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there are times when maybe you'll get a kid in your home who is maybe a little delayed, and you're able to watch that child grow and prosper in your under your care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've known foster parents who have been at the school for IEP meetings or whatever they needed to do to help that
Mm-hmm.
kid get ahead. And the joy of that is when you see the results of that. So
Mm-hmm.
there are really a lot of positives to doing foster care. Um,
So who
and
can we call if I
oh,
wanted to be a foster parent? Who can I get in touch with?
well, there are a lot of companies that you could contact, but I have one in particular
Mm-hmm.
that I'd like to advise you of. It's called Pinnacle. And if you would like to call, you write this number down: 757-846-6953.
Okay.
And when you get through to the line, just tell them what you're calling for. Maybe you're just calling for information at the time, but
Mm-hmm.
they can share what the company does, where you would fit in. If it's possible for you to be a foster parent, they may call you in and go through. And you do have to do a home study to
Mm-hmm.
be a foster parent. Someone has to sit down with you and actually do a written report about who you are and why you want to be a foster parent and all those good things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's a good starting place. It's the call Pinnacle at seven
Mm-hmm.
five seven eight
Mm-hmm.
four six six nine five three.
Okay. And so then.
Robin, do you need to be married to be a foster parent? Do you?
No, you can
Mhm.
be single, you can be married. More recently, we have been able to open some homes where I was at one point for same sex couples, um, because children we're not born yesterday. Children come from all different types of backgrounds, and so
Mm-hmm.
we try to have something that they can relate to, and feel comfortable with. So it doesn't matter anything if you have a love for children and you care about how they're going to turn out in life, then we need to hear from you. We
That
need to
sounds
Mm-hmm.
hear
good.
from you because, you may not realize you have something to offer, but we may see it. We may see that very thing that we think would fit a child. So,
Mm-hmm.
right.
Mm-hmm.
But the need is there. The need is, just think about it. Just in the state of Virginia alone, over 5,000 children in care. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we need to hear from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
We
it's
need
such
you
a
to
rewarding experience.
Yeah, in the words of Michelle Obama, do something.
Do something.
Do
Do something.
something.
And
Yeah.
we need people to do something. And
Yes.
we wanted to have this conversation today to leave the lane open for people to actually do something. There's
Yes.
room
Do
for
something.
people to show up in many different ways. Maybe this is a way that someone is able to show up. And if they can, we're asking them to make that consideration.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. We need you to care for children, and they obviously need you to care for them. I mean,
Absolutely.
we're yelling and screaming too because we need the help. We need team players to come in and help us serve these children.
Mm-hmm.
Healthy homes. Healthy homes.
Right.
That's
And
right.
the important part, you said team players, because one of the things we want to make sure people who decide to foster, they know that it is a team and they're not out there
Yeah.
by themselves.
That's right. It is a team effort. Yes.
Mm-hmm. You
Yes.
will have a team of people that work with you in fostering, in this whole fostering process. So
Right.
this is
Exactly. Right.
certainly a great conversation around such a high need for our community.
Mhm.
And there's so many kids who we can certainly pull out of I guess bad situations,
Exactly.
and even look at, changing the trajectory of their lives by putting them into a quality home. And so certainly something we want to encourage people to do is to step up,
Mhm. That's
and
it.
be that home that a kid may need,
Mhm.
be that example, even if
Right.
it's just for respite services,
Right.
just being able to be that bridge over troubled waters for that kid during that time.
Exactly.
So,
And I always tell foster parents when they're coming in for the first time and they're not really sure this is something they want to venture into, start off doing respite services. Start off
mhm,
doing that, get your feet wet, see how it does for you, and you can always go on into full-time parenting, um,
mhm, mhm,
fostering, if you feel like it works for you. But
mhm.
just do something. Do
Yes,
something
just
is
do
what we're
something.
saying. Yes.
There's room in the end. There's definitely
Yeah.
room for people to do
Yeah.
it. You're wondering what you can do? We just found something for you.
Right.
If it's for you,
Exactly.
and if you can promise to do no additional harm, they
That's
Hmm.
say
it.
call that number 757-846-6953.
That's
All
right.
right. Well, I've enjoyed this conversation and the topic itself. So, thank you, Robin, for joining us here at the table.
I've,
Our
I've
listeners
loved
have
every
gotten
minute of
some, yes,
it.
our listeners have gotten some great information. So, so just do something. That's the message for the day. That's the nugget. Do something. All right. Well, I am Dr. Richard Mason.
I'm Dr. Tamara Williams.
And thank you for joining us right here at the table at WHOV Smooth 88.1 FM.
The essence of HU.
Keep your fork.
Someday we'll be able to measure the power of words. I think they are things. I think they get on the walls. They get in your wallpaper. They get in your rugs, in your upholstery, in your clothes, and finally into you.
Thank you for joining us at the table.
Tune in next Sunday at 1 p.m. for more delicious topical recipes for life on the Sunday Brunch.
On Smooth 88.1 WHOV.